What's up everybody, this is Master Ian Gamer, and today I want to talk a bit about the upcoming announced Brigitte Nerf, which is that her shield bash no longer goes through barriers. This was announced on the Overwatch forums by developer Jeff Goodman just yesterday, and since then I've seen a number of different opinions about whether this is a good thing, whether it's a bad thing, and what exactly it's going to end up meaning for the game overall. So in this video, I just wanted to share my thoughts about this and explain why I think this is actually a really awesome change. So first up, let me just read through what exactly Jeff said. We do have one shield bash change we are playtesting right now, which is likely to hit the next PTR. Shield bash no longer going through barriers. This means it is a lot more tricky to land a clutch stun on an enemy Reinhardt, for example, but you can still use the ability to close distance and land melee hits to trigger Inspire. Now, despite the fact that he says it will likely hit the next PTR, given that he's actually publicly talking about this on the forums, I think it's pretty much guaranteed that this will end up being a change we see, and probably pretty soon. I imagine the PTR is going to go up with these new changes probably within the next week, if I had to guess, so it shouldn't be too long before we actually get to try out the new changes. But the big thing that I love about the idea of shield bash no longer going through barriers is that it directly helps main tanks. I've talked about this so many times over the past couple months. Main tanks are in a horrible position. Not in terms of their balance, because they're still incredibly useful, especially Reinhardt, of course, but they are a pain to play because they are constantly getting stunned, they're constantly getting slept, they're constantly getting booped all over the place, and this feels like the first major step towards making main tanks a better, more enjoyable role to play. Now, before I dive into exactly how this is going to affect the tanks, I want to talk a little bit about how it's going to affect Brigitte. Brigitte has been perhaps the most controversial Overwatch hero we've ever had. Personally, I've generally not been as upset about the character as a lot of other people have. Despite the fact that I play primarily main tanks, I definitely understood the importance of Brigitte and her ability to shut down dive comps, so I haven't always been the biggest fan of the nerfs she's gotten in the past. I do think most of them overall ended up being really beneficial to the game, and she definitely was overtuned when she first released, but taking a look at this new nerf now where she can no longer shield bash through barriers, this feels like perhaps her first legitimately good change. All the other nerfs to her shield bash, just increasing the cooldown, reducing the health of her barrier, those all kind of felt a little bit like just band-aids you're putting on a hero who's not working quite well, and so you're trying to have these little things that kind of make her a bit better, but not really fixing the big issues which were coming about because of the hero. And those big issues, I think for the most part, was that she was too effective at fighting non-dive heroes, primarily tanks. Now, a lot of people talked about, oh, you know, Reinhardt needs to have CC resistance, things like that, which I can kind of understand how that would work, but I think giving Reinhardt anti-CC in and of himself would be kind of OP, and I don't think we're ever going to see that happen. But Blizzard had to come up with a way to make Brigitte not so strong against tanks like Reinhardt, while also still being strong against dive heroes like Genji and Tracer. Simply nerfing her outright and her shield health or whatever other small tweaks they might have made wouldn't really be fixing the problem, because she could still stun Reinhardt through his barrier, and Brigitte has always had decent counters. Play something like Pharah, play something like Junkrat. They can take her down pretty effectively if you know what you're doing with them. But now it sounds like they've found a way that will successfully work around that issue in allowing her to continue to counter dive as she's supposed to, but no longer being this massive imposing threat to someone trying to play Reinhardt. I think Brigitte is still going to be a perfectly fine hero pick after this nerf. I'm certainly not worried about her disappearing entirely, but more than anything, I think this can be seen as a buff to main tanks more so than an actual nerf to Brigitte. So getting onto the main tank aspect now, it also should be noted that this isn't simply something that applies to Reinhardt's barrier, but all barriers. That includes Orisa, Winston, presumably Symmetra as well with her ultimate ability, and of course, Brigitte's own shield. You can no longer shield bash bash an enemy Brigitte who has her shield up. But I do think this will benefit Reinhardt most of all, as Orisa and Winston's barriers can't be moved once they're placed down, so Brigitte can kind of easily just position herself around that anyways. It's mainly gonna stop Brigitte from just walking up to a stationed Reinhardt and just bashing him in the face, and oh, there goes the shield, and oh, here come the sweep darts, here come the flashbangs. Reinhardt's dead. Now, some people have had skepticism about this and that Reinhardt is already kind of a must pick in most situations, and they're worried that removing this stun counter to Reinhardt will just make him even more of a must pick. And overall, it's kind of tricky because Reinhardt works very well with Brigitte, but he's also easily countered by Brigitte. But now it seems like he's not going to be as easily countered by Brigitte, which could actually result in possibly more sort of DPS counters to him, you know, getting more people playing Junkrat, more people playing Reaper, dare I even say someone actually playing Bastion. That's probably never gonna happen, who am I kidding? But rather than getting these triple tank, triple support GOATS comps, which have been running rampant for the past couple months, I think this could actually bring about some more diverse means to try and actually counter Reinhardt, which despite being someone who plays a ton of him, I really don't mind. Being burst down by a Reaper, or Junkrat, or a Bastion feels better than just getting bashed by a Brigitte and then having all these other stuns follow suit until you're dead. Honestly, I don't really think this is going to result in Reinhardt getting played more often than he already is, mainly because he's already played a ton and there weren't really any other heroes he would have gone with because Brigitte would be countering your Reinhardt. So I really don't think this is going to make heavy tank compositions particularly stronger, because especially nowadays, a lot of those are running Brigitte in and of themselves. I think what this is going to do is have a nice sort of shake up to the meta. It drastically changes what Brigitte is capable of doing while still allowing her to do what she was initially supposed to do, which is counter dive heroes. The inability to pass through barriers like this feels like something that should have always been a part of her kit, and probably only wasn't because other melee abilities pass through barriers. Which, to be fair, is something that I like, because I don't like barriers being these just completely impervious shields. Like, I think Doomfist being able to punch through a barrier probably should be left as is, but just having Brigitte's stun on top of that being able to go through just felt a bit excessive. Now that it can't do that, hopefully we're gonna see Brigitte being played where she's supposed to be played, and not as just this default pick who's good against, well, too many different heroes. Anyways, these have been my rambly thoughts about the upcoming Brigitte nerf. I'm super excited to see what it ends up doing for the game. As both someone who plays quite a bit of Brigitte and quite a bit of Reinhardt, I'm really optimistic about what it's gonna do on both ends. But as always, let me know your thoughts about this new change by leaving a comment down below. Do you overall see it as being a good change, or maybe not? Either way, thank you so much for watching, and be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this video, and share it with a friend if you really liked it. Subscribe, follow me on Twitter, and hit the bell to keep up with all my future Overwatch content. This is Master Ian Gamer signing off, and until next time, bash those Reins while you still can, and have a great day.